Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Close.
Yeah, I'm Shang.
You know, yeah.
Good.
I should have helped you.
We're good. That's about it. Wow.
That was very loud.
We get that on film.
Hi everyone. I'm Sam Davis. I shot and produced this film. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Sean Wang. I directed and produced this film, and we have our third producer over there too, Malcolm. Is this work? Hello? Hello? Thank you guys so much for coming. Sam and I are not usually this dressed up. We just came from the nominees luncheon where the two subjects of our film, NÄI NÄI WÀI PÓ, my two grandmothers, we brought them down from the Bay Area and they came to us and they were in a room with Spielberg and Scorsese and Greta Gerwig. And that's kind of the, not even the Hollywood ending because it's still sort of happening, but we shot this movie in the spring of 2021 as sort of a response to, I had moved home from New York after living there for 5 or 6 years and was living in the Bay Area before moving back to Los Angeles to be closer to this guy and a lot of my friends who I collaborate with. And in those, maybe 6 months to 9 months of living at home and really getting to spend time with my two grandmothers, who to me are the most pure form of joy in my life, that kind of coincided with a lot of anti-Asian hate crimes that were happening in our country at the time, especially in the Bay Area, where we shot the movie, where I'm from. And it sort of spurred, as a filmmaker, as a grandson, it just spurred a response in me to try to make something that could combat the sort of headlines of the people like them in our community and try to make something that was a container for what I felt with them, which was joy and silliness and humor and fun. But they are 94 and 83 years old, or they were when we shot this movie, and so wanting to also honor their humanity in a very complex, three-dimensional way, have that joy without ignoring the pain, and have that silliness without ignoring the thoughts of mortality that they might be kind of coming to terms with in their old age. And so Sam and I have been collaborating for about a decade now, and we kind of put this together and as a way to sort of pay tribute to them. And we made it, I don't want to talk about the home video thing, but
I guess that's my cue. Yeah, so I always say that I think it would have made this film, even if you had told us somehow 3 years ago before we shot it that we would be the only ones to ever see it and Sean's family. And we think about home videos, and home videos are only for the people on camera and the person holding the camera and generations to come. And so really this film in its essence is that. It's an elevated home video and it's a tribute to Sean's grandmas. And so yeah, we felt like we had already won because we were able to accomplish that, and everything that's happened since has been incredible and kind of icing on the cake.
Yeah. So I mean, it's insane. We got nominated for an Oscar, and so it was insane, like seeing the grandmas there. It's so insane. But we're so thrilled to share this film with you. Thank you all for coming. We have obviously the incredible Simu Liu who's hosting this, and we're gonna do a Q&A afterwards. And so, so much of this movie was made to help my grandmothers and people like them be seen. And so obviously they're kind of being seen in this room tonight with all of you, but to get to kind of, share their humanity and their humor and their joy on a stage like the stage we have now is so surreal. So I love them, and I hope after watching this movie that you love them as well.
Thanks guys, thanks for being here.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Thank you so much. I don't know if this makes sense. Oh, it does. It does. Well, first off, I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to come and watch NÄI NÄI WÀI PÓ, a short film that, after having seen it, I'm sure I don't need to. I'm sure I don't need to tell you just how incredibly important and meaningful it is to me. Is this working? A little bit.
Use the other one.
Yeah, you're right. We'll give this one to Sean. How's that? Is that any better? I mean, it's such an incredibly important film for me, for so many people. I hope that you were all touched by it. A couple of things to say about Sean. He's having quite the year in 2024 so far. Yes, let's give him a round of applause and embarrassment. Not only is NÄI NÄI WÀI PÓ an Academy Award nominated short film, but Sean's debut feature, Didi, was at Sundance this year. And not only was it at Sundance, it won the Dramatic Special Jury Prize and the Dramatic, the Audience Award. That's an important one. Which is so incredible. It sets my heart and my body on fire knowing that, there are talented filmmakers that are so unapologetically Asian, and watching this just makes me feel pride on an incredible level. I hope you are all feeling some version of the same, and I hope you'll help me and join me in welcoming Sean to the stage now so that we can chat about it a little bit. You're so welcome. You get the broken mic. No, please give me that.
No. It'll hide my
Oh my God.
stuff. Thank you guys again. Oh, it is louder.
It is,
For being here.
It'll kind of crackle on and off. So Sean, you were at the nominees luncheon earlier today with NÄI NÄI WÀI PÓ.
Yeah.
How much, it really strikes me how lucid both your grandmothers are, and incredibly lucid and so emotive and full of life. How much do you think they're able to process what is happening right now?
I honestly think a lot more than I can, because they go to these events or they do an interview, and they're not doing interviews all the time. They kind of do it and they go back to their daily routine. And I think to them it really feels like an opportunity in life that, I think I don't even think I realized, I was talking to my sister the other day, I used to go home, or I used to go back to Taiwan every summer growing up, and my wife, for almost my entire childhood, my entire existence of knowing her, her primary role in life was a caretaker to my Waigong. I would go back to Taiwan, and that's what she spent her entire day-to-day life doing. She was, he was paralyzed. And so her entire life was kind of spent doing that, just making sure he was okay. And after he passed away, I think her purpose in life all of a sudden sort of disintegrated. And she ended up moving in with my family here in America. And I think you see in this film, both her and NÄI have this unbridled joy. They have this young creative spirit. And I think, all we really gave them was a platform and a stage to play. And I think it's only in the last few weeks where I've realized, now that they're kind of going to, they went to Sundance and they were really living it up, and they're oh my gosh, people are again seeing us, and giving us this attention. And it's not attention that's just but they're oh, people like us, we've been so overlooked for so much of our lives. And this is their words, not mine, but they're why would people like us, we're so ugly, we're not movie stars. All of a sudden we get to kind of put them in this spotlight and be no, you guys are worthy of the big screen, you guys are worthy of this attention, you guys are worthy of being seen in this giant sort of global stage. And I think because they're not it's not their really day-to-day, they're just kind of we get to put on a suit and be nice and go dance, and it's really fun and playful. They don't know who Spielberg is, they don't know who Scorsese is, they're just hey, what's up? It's all a little less, I think for me, I'm oh my God, right? So I think for them it's just sort of wow, people are seeing us and we get to kind of play dress up and have fun. So I hope they're processing it well.
I'm sure they're very, very proud of you. So take me through the first conversation that you had with them of hey, I'm gonna start recording your everyday activities. What was, first of all, I would love to know how they felt about your decision to pursue film in general, because as an immigrant kid myself, our parents have thoughts about this, So I would love to know what your NÄI NÄI WÀI PÓ thought, and I would love to know how those initial conversations went, and then take us through those, the first few moments of shooting. Were they always that effortlessly charismatic, or did you feel slowly, there was a process where you slowly felt them start to crack open?
No, they are that effortlessly charismatic. And, I think, we talked about this a little bit, but I think that gulf between who I wanted to be and who my parents wanted me to be, I think that was more one generation of those two, and then my grandmothers were kind of just like, are you still filming stuff? Like, what's going on? Like, are you eating well? Like, that was their primary concern. It was like, what's your career? I was like, are you eating well? Like, did you eat dinner yet? I'm like, in school, fine, right? That kind of stuff. And I think going back to, like, for so much of my life with them, I was that boy with the camera, the grandson with the camera. Even the iPhone, I would make like, I used to make scrapbook, like video scrapbooks. I would film all this stuff on my phone and then cut together like a 5-minute video and share it with them. So they were used to this idea of like me filming them, turning it into something. And the seed of this idea really was in 2018, I made a Christmas card with them, and it was kind of like one of the skits that's in our show, like kind of like the arm wrestling and them drinking whiskey. It was this 1-minute video where basically they start dancing. It's kind of like starts as a music video, and then Waipo tries to feed me blueberries, and I go Waipo wo buyao, which means I don't want it, and she goes no, it's eat. I'm like, I don't want it, and she's like, I'm like, you're so annoying. And then she looks in the camera and then she just slaps me across the face. And then she and I look at each other, and then like subtitles come. It's like, you think what I'm thinking? It's like, yeah. And the music ramps up, and they tie me and they slap me and they spank me with like a bat, and they're like lighting shit on fire, and then like it's just chaos. And then they kill me, bury me in the backyard, and then it cuts to them and it goes happy holidays. So it's like insane. It's a truly insane video.
Yeah, it's like a family Christmas card mixed with Saltburn.
Yeah, and I just sent that to everybody. I like sent it to my friends. I sent it to like people I worked with. I was like, can I get a job out of this? Like, and it was the most fun I ever had making anything, to that point. And I was just like, there's something here. There's something that's so vibrant here that is a little bit untapped. And Sam was kind of, he's one of my best friends, and he kind of was the first one to say that. He was like, you got to do something else with them that's not just this 1-minute Christmas card. There's something here. And ultimately, kind of what I said in my intro is kind of moving back and seeing the sort of quotidian rhythms of their life. And like, I had moved home, and NÄI is 94, 96 now, and luckily she's still in good health, but there's some days where I can really feel her fragility. Yeah. And I had this thought when I was home that when I do eventually move away, I only get to come home every, couple months or a couple days at a time. Anytime I come home or leave home could be the last time I see my grandmother. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the impetus to be like, okay, I think there's something here. It's a response to so much of like the things that were going on in the world, but also just trying to have like a time capsule of that time. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the North Star. It was just kind of what Sam and I said earlier. Like, and it's like a rare moment as a filmmaker where you're just like, and I don't know if it comes. I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing, but so much of the times the things that come like that were so pure actually stem from like this place of anger and frustration. It's like, what, I don't like these headlines are wrong. Like, I love my grandmother so much. Like they don't see what I see. So I'm like, I'm just gonna make something that is so pure to that. Totally. And that was kind of it. It was like, I don't care if anyone likes this. I love this. I think we set out to do what we wanted to do, which was create this portrait of them that felt like them. And so that was kind of it. By the time we released it, it was like, I don't care if anyone sees this. Like, I think my parents are gonna love this. They're gonna love this, and we're gonna have this for generations to come. So that, I don't know, that was a bit of a tangent, but.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, obviously, I echo, all of your feelings of frustration reading those headlines in 2020 and 2021 about, Asian hate crimes, and it felt like so random and so just heartless to me that it felt like our elders were being targeted, and whether or not, you subscribe to some sort of Confucian ideology of family, it's like, you see NÄI NAI WÀI PÓ, and I watch it, and I'm reminded of my own grandparents, which is why I had my own emotional moment over there with you. But are truly, like, you could not find more peaceful souls, more people who are people who are more loving, more gentle, more absolutely harmless to anybody else. It just feels, I mean, I'm sure, you know, a lot of us felt that way, but just like confused as to why of all people, like the NÄI and WAI PÓs of our community would be targeted, you know. But you and NÄI and WAI PÓ did shoot this film. It was, I guess now I'm learning it's your second collaboration. You went on to collaborate with, was it WAI PÓ or NÄI for you?
Yeah.
Didi. Yeah, so you went on to do another collaboration, but cast one of your grandmothers in a narrative role in your feature film. What was the thinking there?
I mean, yeah, it was, so what Simu was alluding to is the feature film that just premiered at Sundance that's coming out this summer. Wai Po plays a character named NÄI in the feature. And so we had this grandmother role, I had written it, it's a scripted narrative feature. And the way we shot this film was so small and intimate, and it didn't feel like a film set. You know, it didn't feel like a traditional, here's our call time, here's whatever. It really was, we woke up, they woke up, and we're like, what are we shooting today? And then we'd shoot some stuff, and then they would go take a nap, and then me and Sam would shoot random B-roll, and then come up with ideas, and then they'd wake up and be like, all right, you ready to shoot something else? So it was really just like piecemeal, and you know, narrative features. There's a first AD, there's a little bit more of an infrastructure, there's trucks and a crew of 60 people. And a lot of my feature film has a lot of first-time child actors, and then but we also had actors like Joan Chen, who's a sort of legend in China and a very, very experienced seasoned actress. And she was ultimately the one who was going to sort of have and need a scene partner to kind of carry it with her. So we went down this rabbit hole of, you know, searching for elder Chinese and Taiwanese actresses. And there were a lot that we met with, like 4-time, you know, like Golden Horse Award winners, and not that they all said yes to me, obviously. So there were people that we were excited about, and then we were just like, nothing's quite clicking. We had already shot this, and me and my producer were just like, dude, what if we casted one of them? It's like, we know they're amazing on camera. We know they have the most soulful eyes. We know that they are magnetic on camera, but can they, you know, there's financiers, what are they gonna think? Are we gonna be able to really put them into the infrastructure of narrative filmmaking? And there's lines and blocking and staging. And it just, there was so much that was a risk factor, but I just knew, I was like, if it works, it would be a home run. And it would, you know, there's this sort of meta homegrown, there's an element to it that only we could do this with our movie. Like no other movie could do this.
Do you feel like maybe your NÄI character was also like inspired by, you know, NÄI and WAI PÓ in a way, like that they were actually the muse for the character in some way, shape, or form? So truly, no one could play those characters better than your actual grandmother. Right?
Yeah, and obviously the NÄI in Didi, which is the name of the feature, is, you know, it's definitely like a dramatic version. There's like, it's not any of my grandmas, but there is a certain charm they have to both of them. And so ultimately we took the swing and we casted WAI PÓ because she's just younger and has more stamina and could, you know, be on a film set without kind of tiring out. And I remember I read with her so much. I was like, you know, all the first-time actors, I was like, you guys are good, but I need to read with my grandma. I cannot be the reason. Like, she cannot be the reason this movie, like, fails. They're like, this kid cast his grandma. She doesn't even want to be here. And so I was, like, running lines with her any spare moment I had. And the first day we filmed with her, it was opposite Joan Chen, and I was like, yeah, like, hey, Joan, like, I'm gonna be here. You want to go rehearse, you know, in the back? She was like, yes, I would love to. Please, I would love to. And I think she was also nervous that, you know, my grandma was playing her scene partner. And I thought we were gonna run the scene a bunch of times. And we read the scene one time, and I'm like, cool, you guys wanna do it again? And she puts her hand on my shoulder and she goes, you're good. She's amazing. And then Joan walks in and I'm like, well, we could read it one more time. But it really was that. And then we got on set and she just, you know, she just killed it.
Wow.
Yeah, she was amazing.
That's incredible. Talking about, you know, there's a moment in the film where they allude to, you know, the way that they spend their days. There's there's a gentleness. I feel like our elders generally, as they get older, there is a sense of like, it's depressing, because I felt it from my grandparents too, but there was a sense of like, we're just kind of passing time, you know? But they allude to this, which is that you being a part of their lives and the moments in which they're able to share with you actually liven them and make them more youthful in a way. And I just feel like through this entire journey and process that you've taken them on, starting from that Christmas card to now NÄI NÄI WÀI PÓ and Didi, I mean, you've really injected them with, like, you know, a new vigor of life, and maybe even a secondary career. And I just wonder how much of that do you feel like in the film, did you want it to be a kind of call out to the audience of, you know, was there a call to action in mind of like, hey, how are your grandparents? You know, maybe you should spend some time with them, and maybe you should take an afternoon and sit with them and ask them questions. And you know, was there a part of you that wanted that to shine through?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, not in a way that was explicit, not in a way that was like, the film ends and there's a card, you know,
Yeah,
call your grandmother.
Call your grandparents.
Call the hotline and we'll connect you with my grandmother. But I think it is that. It is this, you know, going back to the reason we made it, and which was having people like them feel seen. And even with, you know, I think it's twofold. I think with this film, what I really want people to kind of take away is like, you know, seeing people like them, but, you know, you spend 17 minutes and really be with people like them, be with your grandparents, be with your grandmothers, and take the time to listen, take the time to be present. I think so much of what I learned in making this film with them and living with them was sharing space is not spending time, you know. And ultimately, I think what I learned about myself as a film, because I've made a lot of films about my family and like really turned the camera on my family in the last few years, and I don't know that I could have articulated why and why I was so drawn to that. And I think I kind of realized just like this last year, it's my identity as a human is so linked to my identity as a filmmaker. But, and we talked about this a little bit, but it's sort of like in my day-to-day life with my friends, my collaborators, everyone but my family, I am an open book. I'm very like sad boy emo, like very open about my feelings kind of thing. But with my family, I am not. I'm very guarded. And maybe it's a child of immigrants thing, but like with my family, and maybe it's a younger child, like younger son. And so in my family life, you know, I'm very much like, I'm like a son, right? And I'm a grandson, and I'm a little brother, and there's these family dynamics that kind of inform the person I am. And I want to break out of that, you know? I want to see my mom as more than my mom and my dad as more than my dad, and see them as, you know, you grow up and you have this late stage coming of age where you're not just their son, you see them as more than your caretakers and your mothers. And bridging that gap for me in these family dynamics in my life is actually hard. You know, I want to, but it's hard. And I realized through filmmaking, by turning a camera on them, by bringing myself into the process in a way that is so, like, you just can't make a good movie unless you're open, curious, vulnerable, sensitive, listening, and like asking the questions you know, the hard questions. And I think ultimately by making these movies with them, I become so much closer with them too, because it forces both of us to be vulnerable in a way where I'm like, I'm not going to see you as my grandmother for a second, and you're not going to see me as your grandson. We're going to see each other as like human beings. And I think, you know, that connection of filmmaker, human, growing together is something that I think has been really special for me. And I think, again, just going back to your question, just taking that time to be a human with your family and the elders in your life, and
Yes.
you know, spend time with them, ask them the questions. They're the biographers of their own story. One day they're not going to be here. If you don't ask, they're not going to tell you. Especially, you know, you're
Yes.
immigrant.
Absolutely.
You know, they're not going to tell you unless you ask.
Totally.
So ask. You know, like
Yeah.
be present and listen.
You're Academy Award nominated. You won, you won Sundance. Have you had time to, and I know we talked about this so much, but have you had time to process that and then also to think about what is next? It seems like the world, it must feel like the world has just opened up for you.
I mean, it's interesting because I think you and I guess all of you are catching me in a very strange period in my life where we kind of talked about it. I think the movie premiered, but it hasn't actually come out. Like none of you have seen it, and we're kind of in the whirlwind of this campaign that never, kind of what Sam and I said. This all feels just like icing on the cake. Like we've already won in so many ways. Like we premiered at South by Southwest, and we were like, "That's it, tie the bow on this journey." Like that's amazing, world-class platform. And then we won South by Southwest, and so we were like, "Oh, like everything was just so beyond our wildest dreams to be here." And I think that what the two projects have in common is that they are deeply, deeply personal. They come from such a personal place in the sense that, like, when I think of who the audiences for this film and Didi are, I realize by honing in on a very specific slice, the hyper specificity accesses the universal in a way that was almost stubborn. I did not care who the audience for this film was. It's for me and my family, and I think that took us on this journey that I could have never imagined. And same with Didi. I was, sort of, again, in a way that was maybe stubborn or arrogant. I was like, the choices I was making, I was like, this movie is for me and my friends. If it doesn't work for me and my friends, it's not going to work for anybody.
Yeah.
And those are the choices we were making. And I think ultimately that's what made the movie successful at Sundance. It was just like, let's just nail hyper specifically to this sliver of an audience, and hopefully other people can see a version of themselves in it. And so I don't know. I'm not really sure exactly what's next, but I think I need for myself for it to be something that I can really sink my teeth into, because the feature was kind of an insane post-production process, but I wrote it and worked on it for 7 years. And this short film, we shot it in the spring of 2021, and I edited it over the course of 2 years in my bedroom. And so I think everything I do, I just really need to be able to sink my teeth into it and invest that sort of energy. And I don't know when I'm gonna spend the next 4 years yet.
Yeah, fair enough. How are we doing for time? Did I run out like ages ago, or we're good? Should we take audience questions?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they should have a say in this.
You guys have any questions?
When you say you filmed this in the spring of 2021, how many days did you shoot the whole thing?
I think we shot for a total of 8 or 9 days. But again, it wasn't a traditional shoot in the sense that we had a call time, we need to shoot this much this day to whatever. It was so organic, and it was kind of just, how many days can we afford a camera? Sam, when do you have to leave for your next shoot? All right, well, there's an 8-day. Just come live with us for a little bit. And that was it. We would shoot, and then at night we would have some Japanese whiskey and watch what we shot and be like, is this gonna cut together? And we're like, I don't know.
The back. Yeah, in the back in the blue. Sorry.
Yeah, so you shot this digitally, and when did you make the choice to turn it into 4:3?
Well, 2 things. We didn't trick you, it was digital. Some people think we shot on film. Kodak thinks we shot on film. And we were like, you can't post this on your Instagram because we didn't shoot on film. They were like, oh. I think it was always, we always planned to have it 4:3 in the beginning. I think, again, kind of what the feeling I wanted this film to have almost was, again, home video, not literally home video, but like we wanted it to feel like we were capturing a moment in time. Like there's so much in the film that's locked off, it feels like portraiture almost. You could sort of freeze on an image of NÄI reading the newspaper, and it was almost that. It was, what are these images and memories that I see them on a day-to-day basis that one day when they're not here, I see this every day right now. I see them reading the newspaper, I see them washing the dishes, and so it was almost like frames. I just thought of them as frames. I was like, these are portraits of them, and when I think of portraits, I think of 4-3, and so it was kind of like that, making it feel almost like a memory.
I love that. It's like, it reminds me too of like, when I think of home video, I guess it really depends on how old you are, but when I think of home video, I think of like the act of popping a tape into the VCR, and then it's always, it's a 4:3 CRT TV that like, that's how we're used to seeing home video on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked about how hard it was for you to kind of approach your grandmas in the sense of asking them questions, not just about like their day-to-day life, but also their mortality. Do you think it took a little bit of time on their ends to open up to you that way? Because I know for, like you were saying, a lot of BIPOC communities, there's like such a interesting dynamic, especially how they view their grandchildren and how they decide to communicate that.
I don't think there was hesitance, but I think it goes back to what I was saying, where in order for them to open up to me, I had to open up to them. And, I think they knew from the beginning. I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun and silly and a little bit more of the same, like, I'm gonna turn you into movie stars. But then being very open and honest too about being like, hey, beyond just the movie, like, I really want to have a personal record of what your lives were like before you were my grandmothers. And I knew the broad strokes of their childhoods and the sort of pains that they went through, but I didn't know the details, and so it was kind of telling them also like, hey, are you okay with sharing that stuff with me? Because I do want to know, and it's not stuff we obviously talk about every day at the dinner. I'm not going to make them relive it day to day. And it was just like, let's just do this. Let's have this conversation, and a decade, 2 decades from now, like, we will always have these stories on record. But I know it's going to be painful, and it's going to be painful for me to hear it as well. But I think this is something we should do, because if you don't tell us, if you don't say this out loud, your stories are going to be forgotten. And they were like, makes sense.
One thing that I just thought, well, it made me happy, and I thought it was brilliant, was that there were 2 grandmothers, maternal and paternal, were in the same household. Is that unique?
I think so. It's interesting because I think what's helpful about having people like Sam, people like Malcolm, working on things that are obviously very, very personal to me, but then sometimes things are so personal that I forget that they're unique, because, you only know your given circumstances. And so there's even stuff like them sleeping in the same bed, I'm just like, oh yeah, they sleep in the same bed. Sam was like, they sleep in the same bed? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that's so special, like that's, and then, that prompted, okay, well, that should be an interview question, let's ask about it. And, some of that is in the movie. But even it goes back to the relationship. I think the relationship that in-laws have, it is rare for them to get along like this. And I think it's even rarer in Chinese culture. And, we had someone host a screening, and they were just like, I have an NÄI WAI PÓ, and like, I cannot imagine them together. Like, I get along with them individually, amazing, but the idea of them living together is batshit. But it's like, that's not my relationship, right? And so sometimes you only know what you know, and then it takes sometimes in a more objective eye and outside eye, I'd be like, whoa, that's really special and unique about what you and your family have. That's really special and unique. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is. And I think that extends to even the feature film. I remember having discussions with my producers of like, hey, like, this isn't autobiographical, but so much of it is really personal. If the personal ever gets in the way of just the story we're telling, shake me out of it. And sometimes they would bring up something like, hey, I think you're really attached to this, but it's not actually helping the story. And I would ask myself, is this important to me, or am I attached because I have a memory attached to it, or I'm attached because it's good for the story? For example, I really wanted to shoot in this mall. And they were like, the mall costs $50,000. Also, it's a horrible location. And I was like, but I used to go to that mall all the time and hang out at the fountain. They were like, that fountain is hideous. We should look for something else. It's $50,000. And I was like, okay. And then I zoomed out and I was like, they're right. It's very ugly. And then we shot in a different location and it's like my favorite scene in the movie.
In the front?
I think that, I'm trying to put together my question, but I think that at the end, when I think is your wife, the older one? Or
Younger one. But
Yeah, okay, then,
Sprite.
your NÄI saying that she chooses joy instead of fear. What was the timeline, like, was the Asian hate happening when you had moved back already? Or did you experience that uptick with them after moving? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the timeline exactly, but I definitely remember I was in New York, before I moved back, and already feeling that sense of pain and anger, and there was already kind of like headlines happening. And then I moved home, and so, because it wasn't just like 1 week, and it was kind of a period of time. And I remember being home in my room, and I remember there was like a New York Times article about anti-Asian hate crime, and they literally were talking, like, I remember it was like a portrait of a family, 3 women, and it was like that they were from Fremont, California, talking about the anti-Asian hate crimes. And I was like, this is literally my backyard and happening to people who look and talk and feel like my family. And it was really that, like, it was like, how can anybody, like, if you know NÄI NAI WÀI PÓ, like, you're gonna punch them in the face? Like, that's insane. Like, who would punch them in the face? For their jewelry? Like, it's just such an insane thing to me, and it was like so angry. And so, again, I don't remember the exact timeline, but I remember feeling it in New York, and I still felt it, and I was still seeing headlines about all that, because I remember it was like, I just can't look at the news. I like get so angry. But when we shot it in, I don't know, April or May, so it was just, I don't know the exact timeline, but it was definitely, I felt that anger, joy, like those extremes living with them, and so that's ultimately what kind of prompted everything, so.
When NÄI NAI WÀI PÓ, or I forget who was reading the paper, but that's what they were alluding to, right? That they said that they hadn't been to the supermarket in over a year. So those stories were making their way into Chinese language newspapers as well. Is that what
Yeah, and I mean, it was also, still very much COVID era-ish.
Yeah.
And so I think it was just this interesting time in American and just global history where, it was from 2020, I felt like, to maybe 20, I mean, still happening, but like, it was the Parasite wins Best Picture, all of a sudden, like, they were finally, like, being seen as this cultural, like, not even important, but just like, we're here, like, we exist. And then a month later, COVID happens, and we're like racial scapegoats. And it was just like and that feeling never went away. And I don't think, it still kind of lingers, but I think there was 2-3 years where it was just so prominent. And like, I experienced it in New York, people would look at me funny and say things to me, and then just like, if I'm feeling that and I'm like, speak perfect English, I'm like, what are my that fear that my grandmother's like, we can't go outside, like, we have nothing to protect us. So I think it was that, it was just sort of, again, going back to why we made the movie, it was like, they're so human, they're so funny, they're so joyful, they're so sad, and they feel loneliness, they feel desire, they feel all the things that we all feel, to a degree that maybe is even more than we feel. They understand the pain of losing a friend so much more than I do. And so it was really that. It was like, I don't know, it's a hard feeling to really put into words, because I think that, like, if filmmaking is all about translating an emotion, I think so many of the personal films that I've done that help me latch onto something is when I feel the most of an emotion. I'm like, okay, there's something here that is so palpable. What is the cinematic translation to like translate that feeling to an audience? And I think with this, it was extreme anger, extreme joy, and then everything in between. And it was like, let's make the container that contains all of that.
Yeah.
Can we do it? I don't know. That's me and Sam's job, and trying to figure out how to do it. But that was the goal. And I hope it worked. Yeah.
I think you did it. Just a very quick last question before we wrap up. And this one's totally just for me, but if you think NÄI NAI WÀI PÓ could be here with us tonight at the screening, do you think there's any words of wisdom that they would like to impart, or anything that you feel like they would say?
Why? Yeah, I mean, this isn't really like words of wisdom. Waipo said this in an interview one time, and she was just like, she started talking about like children, but she was like, don't force your children to be the versions of themselves that you think they should be. Because so much of our film is about multi-generational relationships. And I think she has seen, people one generation below her try to turn their kids into the versions that they, going back to like, I'm an immigrant, so, and I think she was like, ultimately, I saw it firsthand with me, like, you were able to, not that my parents didn't have conflicts about like, oh, like, should you or should you not, but ultimately they've been supportive in terms of, okay, we're not gonna stop. We're like, when I was spending all my time making videos in high school, they're not like, stop doing that. They were just like, okay, this is a thing you love, we get it, keep going, but don't forget about all the other stuff. And I think she was like, you allow the people you love to follow the path, whatever it might be, and just lift them and support them, they will find their way. I think that's a really beautiful thing, let the people in your life that you love, let the people you love find their way, even if it means they have to take a few sidelines. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, NÄI, through Sean.
Thank you guys
all
so
for
much
being here.
for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Simu.
One more round of applause for Sean.
Simu.